Wow, thank you so much. Oh, I've been crying all day, you guys. This is an interesting experience. I just want to take a second to thank you all for being here, taking this time. I know Sunday is kind of a hard one. Some of you might be stressing about leaving soon. And grateful to the NTA. I wouldn't be here if it weren't for the NTA and all of you supporting me and my message and Happy Weight and everything that has transpired. Let me make sure I've got my clicker here. So for those of you who don't know me, I am Daniele Della Valle. I am an NTP like you, and I'm sure we had some similar experiences, but all of us are, unique in our own different ways. But what inspired Happy Weight more or less was kind of my upbringing. I grew up in Orange County, California, and most of you know that Southern California is one of those places. My mom calls it the land of beautiful people, but I call it the land of shaming for sport. So I never had the opportunity to gain weight. That's a weird thing to say, right? I never had the opportunity because food shaming was every day, body shaming was every day. It was one of those things that I witnessed people, they would put weird things on their food so that they would make sure they wouldn't eat it. And eating disorders were normalized. And, talking about a person's weight was an everyday conversation. And so for me, going through the program at NTA, of course, I was very inspired. I've always been a very loving and non-judgmental person, but I didn't realize that the narrative was much more painful and excruciating until I worked in the weight loss industry. And my first job out of, the NTP program was in a ketogenic weight loss clinic as their principal nutritionist. And so I had a different kind of perspective. The rest of the women that were working there were consultants, and so they were trained in the program, and but for me, I had the foundational perspectives, right? I was like, okay, this is interesting. When we greet someone, we're immediately putting them on a scale, we're immediately measuring them, we are immediately shaming this person before we tell them that our program is going to save their life. And so after 2 years, I realized that it wasn't something that I was passionate about anymore because I started to see all of these things unravel. And mind you, I was seeing 20 women a day. So I had a direct insight into the modern American woman and how she operates and, how she feels about food and different anxieties and learning about body language and all of these things. It was a crash course. And so I decided to go into private practice and I wanted to develop my own narrative. And I didn't really know what that meant. It's not like I had it all figured out as soon as I started my own practice. Like most of you, it's not an easy thing to just I'm gonna start my own business and do this thing and change lives, right? So as I was developing this narrative, I realized that weight loss did not have to be at the forefront of how we run our practice. I kind of, let that sink in, and I started to change the language. And I wasn't forceful, I carefully carried the conversation between myself and my clients. And I realized that I could steer the conversation in a different direction in the way that I felt was most beneficial for both of us in the end. And then I realized that so much was changing in these people, and there was a different relationship with their body, a different relationship with food, different perspectives with relationships in general and just their life. And so then I decided to do something crazy, and so I wrote a book about it because I felt that I can't see thousands of people every day, so how can I kind of compartmentalize all of this information based on the NTA philosophies, because that is my heart blood. And so I wanted to make sure that this was something that practitioners could use as a tool and maybe also be inspired themselves. So that's how I got Happy Weight. And how many of you had Kathy Eason as an instructor? Doesn't she look smoking? I gotta tell you, so it's really interesting to kind of be forecasting a different movement in nutrition, right? So I've had a lot of resistance with this cover because these are beautiful women. They're normal women, they're all of us. And the thing is that they're not CGI'd, they're not airbrushed. That is literally an unfiltered photo of pure bliss. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm quite the nudist and the advocate for nudity. Because there's something about clothing that actually makes us hyper aware of our bodies, which is really bizarre, right? But it is interesting, it becomes a shield of our emotions. And when these women were in my kitchen at 7 o'clock in the morning, we probably should have had some champagne because we were a little nervous at first. But, kind of unaltered, we decided, okay, this is what we're going to do. And everyone was kind of looking around the room of who was going to disrobe first and, how this was going to happen. But the first person that took their bra off, it didn't matter anymore. It was like, yep, we're all naked. And then there was nothing inhibiting them. They just felt free. They felt themselves. You could see them relax. And then the conversations that were exchanged as they were, putting their body paint on, that was a beautiful moment for me because that's something I love to facilitate. I love facilitation of people being able to be completely outside of their bodies for a moment and realize that they are perfect exactly the way they are. And so this beautiful image happened. It was very chilly. It was October here in Vancouver, Washington. So they were very cold, but they just had such a wonderful moment, and there was so much love involved. And that's what inspired me to write Happy Weight. And then I put this quote in the book. To love yourself is to be released from the judgment of others. And let that sink in for a minute and think about that. Think about what it is to truly love yourself and how that can actually cultivate a relationship that you have with yourself where you actually create this beautiful blockade of the judgment of other people because you stop caring about what they think. And my philosophy of the book is that it is a state of being. Happy Weight is actually the consciousness of a world without living a prisoner to our own bodies. That's a weird thing to say, right? A prisoner in your own body. I don't want people to feel like they're a prisoner in their body. And it's a pathway of living as our true self and not being categorized as a thing that has to fit into inhuman mold, because that's what happens to us, right? The weight loss obsession. I don't want to offend anyone as we talk about weight loss, and if this is a triggering subject, just know that the context comes from a loving place. But as women, we fight almost from birth to live without flaws. I even see language that is used on infants that can't defend themselves. The word chunky, things like that ends up still developing into something negative in adulthood. I don't like the fact that we start these negativities from birth. And this is how we raise women. That's how we were raised as women, and this is how daughters are raised as well. And then we let the scale determine how our day will go. Some people still, as a ritual, get on the scale every day, and they look at that number as it's supposed to determine how their day is going to go. And for some people, they live in this consistent negative loop because they will see a number that they don't like, and then the shame cycle begins. And sometimes, unfortunately, we push that agenda on our clients. And that was what I experienced when I was working at the ketogenic clinic. They had to weigh in every time they came to see me. And so I, unfortunately now, am probably an anchor for shame for some people. And I had no idea that that was something that I was a part of. We determine our worth of others and identify our personal achievements by our body image. And that's something, so determining the worth of others by body image is something that happens. I have had literal conversations, this is predating my new current existence and how I like to carry myself, but I remember having conversations with people about how someone else looked like they weren't doing so hot in life because they gained weight. What is that? That is not appropriate behavior. Those are not appropriate conversations. Someone's worth has nothing to do with their body at all whatsoever. Currently, this is our reality. I was really, really grateful to Stacy for talking about this yesterday. As her being a professional working in eating disorders, it was really important to talk about the fact that anorexia nervosa is the highest mortality rate amongst all mental illnesses. And that between 5 to 20% of them who develop the disease, they will actually die from it. People die from anorexia every day. 13 million are binge eating, 10 million are either battling anorexia or bulimia, and about 1 million men also are battling eating disorders as well. This is about an average body size. They just used it for statistical research, but the thing is there is no one right way to have a body. And luckily we're learning that now, that BMIs and scales and measurements and all of these things, they're not a measure of our health. But unfortunately, adolescent girls, we're starting to see food restriction as early as age 10. And we're actually seeing the facilitation of diets from mothers. I'm sure there are people in this room that had their mother put them on a diet when they were very young, if not take them to a specific facility for that. And thinking about social media as well. Social media is still very new for all of us. I'm still trying to figure it out. But what we don't realize is that there's actually responsibility with that, right? What was that quote from Spider-Man? With great power comes great responsibility. And so thinking about this, you do have power. Despite how many people watch your stories or follow you or anything like that, there's still 1 or 2 or thousands of humans that are watching what you do and what you say. And especially teenagers. I remember being in high school and having so much time to do other things. And now social media and the internet is a majority of downtime spent. And so if we think about that, they're on social media and they're looking, for inspiration, mentors, different styles of being or eating. And so unfortunately, social media has increased eating disorders, especially in young women or maybe even ourselves, maybe even in our own community. So I think just knowing of, coming from a place of love and, coming with that love and honoring the educational process of bodies and nutrition and health and really trying not to be as dogmatic, because then we realize that we actually can be the ones that could be creating eating disorders. And I don't mean that to offend anyone in the room. Just know that with this job, we do have a great responsibility. Sorry. This is a picture of my husband and I the night before we got married. This was at our rehearsal. And that's my Aunt Leslie, or it was. She will have passed 2 years in May. And one of the contributing factors to her passing was because of her body image. My Aunt Leslie, unfortunately, had, chronic illness and autoimmune diseases. And, there were other contributing factors, but her dramatic weight loss because of food restriction was the unfortunate aspect of her dying of pneumonia because she did not have enough fat on her body to help her to fight the infection. I wish that I could have gone back 60 years and told her that it doesn't matter what size you are, just as long as you're here. Because to go from a 16 to a 00 when you're taking Humira shots every single day, in my opinion, is not appropriate. And for family members to tell you that you're looking good, even though they know you're relying on oxygen and injecting yourself with Humira, is also not appropriate. But you all know you can't be a prophet in your own home, right? So I just want to, through this moment of my own personal experience, to tell you that just because someone is thin does not mean they are actually healthy. Numbers are not our friend. We identify with numbers. Our weight, our pant size, our shoe size, our height, our bank account. You know, these numbers are always very, very, very forward in our mind. Some of us can remember what we weighed on prom night, what we weighed on our wedding day, how much we weighed after we gave birth. You know, there are all of these different beautiful, momentous occasions that happen, yet we can still remember a freaking number. That's ridiculous, don't you think? And they have actually become our measure of worth. They will be wired as triggers for us. And we will start to think, oh, I'm in a size 6, so, you know, why am I not in a size 2? And those numbers have weight, they carry emotion, they carry existence. And that is exactly what has happened to us because we carry these conversations every day. We talk about these things every day. And we don't realize that we are literally rewiring our brains to be in this constant shame and guilt cycle because of something that is just as redundant or arbitrary as a number. I don't know when it became the norm to gauge your worth based on a number, but when did it become the norm for us to present ourselves to others or talk to each other, you know, not based on other things that are going on in our lives, the non-weight accomplishments? You know, I recently, and you know, of course, I understand that I am like a beacon of change, and I'm really trying to be constructive with my own personal conversations, and so I'm still trying to navigate that in terms of like when someone else says something to me. But recently, someone kept telling me how tired I looked. You look so tired. And I wanted to say, why don't you say I look like a badass because I've been working really hard? You know what I mean? Why do we have to take it to a negative when I've been working my tush off to get to this point? But that's what we do. We're so ready to be negative instead of living and loving from a positive space. Perfection addiction. So this is kind of where it comes from. This is where it all stems. We think that there's one right way to be. We think there's one right body to be in, that there's one specific ideal that exists. But truth bomb, you are never going to be pretty enough to fit in the airbrushed and CGI'd non-existent superwomen on magazine covers and billboards because they're not real. They don't exist. This is something that has been fabricated in order to brainwash you, to make you think that you are not worthy so that you buy more crap. And women have been fighting since antiquity to fit into a mold created by men. Sorry to the men in the room, I love you. But we do know, I mean, women were just allowed to wear pants like 100 years ago. Literally 2018 is the 100-year anniversary of suffragettes and like our right to vote. So it's pretty crazy that we have only like just recently been able to wear pants. But society tells us that we need to buy that more because we will never be pretty enough, skinny enough, have a perfect complexion. And I gotta tell you, I've had acne issues since I was a child. Yes, I've healed my gut, I take supplements, but I'm still gonna break out and it's normal. And there's no amount of chemicals you can sell me to put on my face that's gonna make that stop. It's just gonna happen. You know, and that's the thing, is that they're trying to create this ideal of perfect, but perfect doesn't exist. Dusty, just in the green room, gave me this beautiful sentiment that in Hebrew, he says that there is no word for perfect, that life is just a process. And thank you for that, because it's really true. This is just a process of living. We're on a journey right now. And I love to tell people, this is just an organic machine house for your consciousness, right? Despite what you believe in, this body is just here to take us through this life. It's not meant to define, determine. It doesn't keep us from doing anything. It doesn't create anything for us. It's just here to love us. And we nourish it, and it takes care of us, and it carries our brain around, and all of those wonderful things. But I'm pretty sick of the fact that this is how we live in our society. And so this is why I'm hoping to encourage you all today to help to change these conversations. And so kind of imagine for a second, what would a world without body image look like? How would you greet people? Can you even think about that? What would it look like? Would it be positive or would it be negative? I'm pretty sure it would be positive, that we would be able to walk around. We'd put a lot of people out of business, right? Because we would pretty much be naked all the time, and then I'd get what I want. So, but just think about it. Do you define your life by your body image? Does it rule your career? Does it define how you, go about your relationships? Is it the forefront of your relationship with yourself? And this is, something I'm just posing. I'm not trying to place any blame on anyone, but do you judge your clients, your friends, your sisters, or your mother's worth by their body image? Based on that conversation that I had so many years ago. I was definitely, a part of that conversation. So maybe there are some of us that still are in that narrative. Do you love your body? This is a loaded question. Because honestly, I want everyone to answer a question for me. I'm going to poll you guys. I want a show of hands. Everyone in the room, who has at one point in your life hated something about your body? Look around. It's an epidemic. Thank you for answering that question. And this is the thing. If you ask someone something about their body, they're going to tell you 20 negative things before they're going to tell you something positive. They're not going to say, I love my hips, or, that I have amazing, well, I don't want to use anything, inappropriate, but but I love everything about myself, right? That's not something that we're going to immediately walk into. We're typically going to say, well, I hate my skin, my hair's dry, I wish that I had smaller this or bigger that, or I wish I was taller this or shorter that. We're always trying to change something, and we always think it's just that age-old, the grass is always greener. But saying that completely writes off the fact that we do not love ourselves. So don't say the grass is always greener. Get to the root of why there is a hate there, why there is a negativity there, because it's most likely it came from a conversation had. I know that I wasn't even really aware of my body image until I was a teenager, and that was something that everyone started talking about. I was subliminally, programmed eating disorders and body shame based on the women that were around me, but I wasn't completely aware of myself until people started to tell me that I needed to wear makeup, and then I needed to pluck my eyebrows, and that, I needed to do this thing with my hair. And literally my mom has been taking me to get my hair dyed since I was 11 years old. When my hair stopped being blonde, we started dyeing it. And now, unfortunately, I do, and trust me, I wrote the book on loving yourself, but I'm still processing things. It's hard for me to feel myself if I'm not blonde. So there are these things that we do. So if there is a thing that you do not like about yourself, think about where it came from. When did that conversation begin? And how is it cascading into who you are now and how you carry yourself and your conversations with other people? So thinking about what kind of relationship you have with your body. And the next one, have you thanked your body recently for giving you life? Once we've processed all of that information in terms of where those conversations began, and then we get to a place where we can truly appreciate, what is happening, do you thank your body? Do you have constructive conversations with it? And this is the hard part. This is a conversation that can be difficult for some, but there can be a lot of victim mentality in the chronic illness and sometimes the wellness community. That we start to say that my body did this to me. It failed me. So then I hate my body. And recently I gave a talk at NUNM, which is National University of Natural Medicine, on rewiring your limbic system with body positivity and positive body talk. And the fact that we actually, yes, food is important, but we do have this part of our brain that needs to be nurtured through positive conversations. Because sometimes we can also be perpetuating illness if we are not checking in and having these positive conversations with ourselves. Like, hey body, I know we're not perfect right now, but thanks so much for, getting to this one point where we're at right now. And treating it like a relationship, because it is a relationship. The one thing you are going to have your entire life is your body. And this is the only body you get, depending on what you believe in this life. So, I don't know if we believe in reincarnation. But, thinking about, admiring those imperfections that make you uniquely beautiful. So going back to not thinking about the grass is always greener, but thinking about the fact that everything that we have is unique. And it is perfect the way that it is. It's okay to want to change things over time because our body's always going to change. It's going to ebb. It's going to flow. We shed skin cells all of the time. There's this process already happening around us. Our body is doing all of these physiological processes without us really even knowing it. So just making sure that we recognize those imperfections that we think are imperfections. They're not. They're our body. But just really trying to embrace everything that you have. We want to be able to make sure to appreciate during the healing process, like I said before, that positive body talk. And really, even if you haven't reached your goal, because I'm pretty sure, I'm just, feeling the room here. But as practitioners, we want results, right? We work with clients, we want to make sure what we're doing is correct, the different protocols we've done for ourselves. We want to see something happen as we're, working on our health. But the thing is that we need an element of forgiveness. We need to be able to know that the process there is no one right way of being. And that's where the bioindividuality piece comes in, where we'll talk about in a moment. But we have to understand that there is no perfect way and that we should love ourselves through the entire healing process. Advocating for change. The power of positivity, optimism, and suggestion. So I'm super woo-woo, but some people think that stuff is pseudoscience, which is great. But if it's just placebo effect, the power of suggestion is very powerful. So regardless of that, we can help to ignite the change just based on our positive perceptions. It helps us to have a clear mind when making decisions, and it helps us to be more vulnerable to open up and make the right choices for our health. Are you changing the narrative? Some of you might be, some of you, this might be a brand new conversation for you. But how can we as practitioners, or even just women, guide the narrative to a positive outcome? So a lot of these things are kind of going back, and where we have to use ourselves as a piece of understanding for our clients as well. So having those conversations with yourself. How am I feeling? Do I love myself? Am I loving myself through the healing process? How am I with me? So that you can show up and be there for them, right? When you greet another woman, are you greeting her with positivity or negativity? Just like I said before. You look tired or you gain weight. It's just one of those things, like how are you greeting your clients? How are you greeting other people? And this is the thing is, love and forgiveness always. We're not going to be perfect all of the time. It's very difficult to change narrative and language. While I was writing the book, I literally told my husband he was not even allowed to compliment me because I needed to understand what a process was without compliment or conversation regarding anything physical. And, it was a weird exchange, and it was, I was trying it on for size to see what it was like, but then I arrived at a place where I was like, okay, now I can love other people from completely different perspectives and pull out things that they love about themselves, or things they've been working on, or things they've accomplished. And it really just changes everything, because the moment you say that about a person, they just light up. And then they feel safe, and they feel welcomed and warm and comforted. And I mean, we are social beings, regardless if we're introverts or not. We're communal species. So the art of being loved and liked is very important to all of us. And so making sure that we carry that positivity so other people do feel recognized, through that narrative and that process. So those shaming conversations are really, 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 really detrimental. So making sure that we can be very aware of that and making the right choices. Bioindividuality. So like I said before, I don't want to, push any ideals on anyone else, but just think about this for a second. Happy weight is not a diet. It's an idea that we as individuals are the only ones that hold the key to our health. As practitioners, you're facilitators, right? Like, you're guides. You are there to help these people on this healing journey. And so essentially, that you are helping them. It's almost like they have the key, but you're the gatekeeper, right? And so thinking about that and thinking about how much power that comes with that. Because I believe, and this is not what everyone believes, that if we use weight loss as the catalyst of our health education, we are not very good practitioners. And we must respect the bioindividuality of the body and investigate from a foundational perspective. How many NTA instructors do we have in the room right now? Okay. And are the foundations, we know the foundations, right? Is weight loss any one of the foundations? No. It's digestion, mineral needs, essential fatty acids, hydration, blood sugar. Weight loss is not in there anywhere. And so this isn't to discourage you, this isn't to shame anyone in the audience, but this is an opportunity for change, to realize that the person, regardless of what they came in for, because they might come into you for weight loss because they don't know, a majority of our nation attributes nutrition to weight loss. So we have to understand that that is the current narrative that we're dealing with. But when they come in, we have that opportunity to change that conversation. We have that opportunity to say, how's your blood sugar doing today? How's your water going? And you also have tools. You have the knack. You have all these questions and things that you can ask your clients to literally take an actual scientific approach to see how their internal health is doing. We don't need to put them on a scale. We don't need to measure them. We don't need to do any of those things in order to be good practitioners, right? And so creating a different ideal of focusing on your practice as being a place of healing and not a place of shame. A happy mind is a happy body. As you can see, I am a beacon of positivity. So I truly believe that if we live our life in a positive spectrum, we can really start to change everything in our life. And so when reading Happy Weight, you're gonna find that, and this is the fun thing about Happy Weight, you don't actually have to read it in succession from beginning to end. You can literally start at any chapter you want to, and it will make sense, which is really interesting because not sure I intended on that, but when Jimmy Moore read it, he was like, you should just tell everyone to start on the vulnerability chapter. Well, we'll get there in a second. But these are a few things you're going to find in the book. Of course, body positivity, emotional freedom, and what that looks like. Food freedom and intuitive eating. Intuitive eating is actually a very tricky topic in our community right now because there are intuitive eating practitioners out there that are saying, whatever you feel like you want to eat today, you should eat. But we know as practitioners that there are cravings that are actual physiological happenings of what's going on inside of our body, right? We could have an overgrowth of candida, which actually triggers the brain to eat more carbohydrate or sugar. And so just actually being that person who's going to educate these people and say, let's learn how to make these connections, like cravings and connections. Anyway, so, just really tapping into their bodies and being able to say, like, okay, if we're going to intuitively eat, let's take a constructive approach and understand what that actually means. Because this is the thing, this is my personal philosophy. I am not a hand holder. Because I feel like if we hold hands, we do not give personal responsibility over to our clients. And they're not able to go on this journey to feel empowered at the end that they can make the choices for themselves. You don't want them to call you in a year and say, I feel great, but I did this, what do I do now? You want to be able to give them the tools so that they can call you in a year and say, you changed my life, I know how to navigate everything now. That, to me, personally feels more satisfying than having someone continuously for decades on time, because you want to be able to give people tools not only to empower themselves, but then they advocate and they go out and they change the world as well. So just thinking about intuitive eating from a different physiological perspective and truly getting to know your body. Healing loving relationships and removing toxic relationships. So toxic relationships are a little bit more of a heavier topic because sometimes they're family members, and that can be very difficult. That's not something I push, and that's why I'm really glad that it's a very easy chapter to read, because then it just kind of presents the idea that maybe changing conversations with that person or trying to navigate that relationship in a different way, could be beneficial not only for your personal health, but helping for the health of everyone else around you. Because the unfortunate aspect is that we do have people in our life that they don't understand what we're doing when we're trying to change. They don't understand our health protocol. They don't understand, why we're maybe going non-toxic in our home. And the thing is that I love to talk about projection a lot. When people are insecure, they are known to project their fears. And typically when someone is negating you or they're going against what you're trying to teach them, it's because they're afraid. They think that you won't like them. They think that you will judge them. They feel like they're not a part of your tribe anymore. Change is very difficult for people regardless of the fact that they think that they're great with change. So just remembering that, and like I said before, coming from a place of love and understanding that these things can be really difficult for people. Healing loving relationships. Oh, I just went over that one, sorry. Vulnerability. Vulnerability is a huge one. Who knows Brené Brown? Almost everyone in the room. Yes. I definitely make sure to quote her because I always make sure I want to quote other people for their hard work. I mean, geez, 20 years of working in shame and vulnerability. That's a lot of hard work. And she's pretty incredible to crack that egg open to teach us what vulnerability can do to help us change in our lives, especially with our bodies. It's a really interesting thing when we actually start to experience that radical vulnerability. For me, I was actually, and believe it or not, did not talk very much before the age of 16. I was very quiet, and crying in front of other people was very shameful. And so that wasn't something that felt good to me because I thought I was doing something wrong or that I was burdening other people. But now I cry all the time. It's probably 16 years of pent-up sadness. But at least I'm releasing it, right? Because a lot of us who are familiar with Christiane Northrup, Dr. Northrup's work, is that disease can actually be rooted in trapped trauma. And so it's really important to recognize that vulnerability is a very, very, very important part of the process. And then also too, as we're learning happy weight, knowing and understanding our scope of practice as well. If you do have clients that do have deeper traumas that we can't deal with, make sure that we're reaching out and being able to work with other people who do have that scope of practice. And lastly, finding your tribe. This was huge for me. When I found the NTA, I was reborn. I was like, these are the people I've always been looking for. I'm not weird and nothing is wrong with me. And the fact that I can leave raw cabbage bubbling on my counter is cool. And growing out my armpit hair wouldn't be weird. But this is the thing, is finding your tribe can actually help you to find yourself. Danielle was always in here, but she didn't know that she could be her because she didn't feel that acceptance. And so yes, you have all found your tribe, but maybe your clients haven't. Maybe you have clients out there that really have been desperately wanting to crochet for 20 years, but they feel weird about it. I know that's a weird example, but whatever it is, whatever their process of creativity, however they define or want to be, engaged in activity with other people, encouraging them to step outside of their comfort zone to do things like that. Because when we feel loved and supported and comforted, like I feel by all of you right now, you feel like you can take on the world. And so we can actually help to cultivate that empowerment for our clients. So when we talk about body positivity, we want to make sure that we are going to be comfortable in our own skin so that we can make the best choices for our life. And that's interesting. It sounds kind of vague. You're like, what does that even mean? But essentially, when we stop thinking about the physical body, we can start to navigate other things that are going on in our lives. And so really take that with you today. How much time do you spend thinking about your physical body instead of the other things that you are maybe wanting to pay attention to or cultivate or, try and inspire in others? Of course, emotional freedom, like I said, if you want to cry, cry. You don't have to. I just like to do it now, and I could pretty much do it on command. But I love life. I love all of you guys. I'm just, my heart is cracked open all the time. So, just experience those feelings because they are valid and true. I do have to thank my husband for this. Because for the first time in my life, I had never heard that my feelings were valid until I met him. So I literally was walking around for 26 years of my life not thinking that I was validated. Do you know how much damage that can do to you? It's unfortunate because if you don't feel validated, then you feel like you're a burden on every single person. And so making sure that you understand that whatever it is you're feeling, whether sometimes I feel like I'm irrational or not, those are actual feelings I'm experiencing. Getting into bio-individual nutrition, I don't need to teach any of you about that. But just knowing that, of course, and just really stressing that every single person that you see, and yourself especially, is unique and you are an individual. Geographical location, finances, genetic mutations, environment, everything. Of course, we went a little bit into removing toxic relationships, but just to kind of clarify that any single person in your life that actually negates your growth or holds you back is actually a toxic relationship. So if anyone is not supportive of the things that you do in your life, it is unfortunately a relationship that is not conducive. It doesn't mean you have to cut that person out, but it's really important to make sure that you visualize how it could be different. Of course, sharing our truth in our healing process. Goes a little bit deeper, of course. Asking for help. How hard is it for people to ask for help? Yeah, almost everybody, right? I still carry my own groceries. It's really weird. But and then just kind of coming to a head and saying that, sometimes being selfish can actually save you. Because you are your number one. You're the longest relationship you're ever going to have. And just making sure that putting yourself first, it's the same metaphor of the oxygen mask in the airplane. You want to make sure yours is on first. So just make sure that you are a priority. Because cortisol is not your friend. It will wreak havoc on your body, and anytime we are outside of ourselves or stressing, we're going to be expressing that. And we went through the tribe, all of my slides, I kind of went ahead. But anyway, so I just really wanted to leave something different with you all today. I know this is probably new information for some of you. It's probably not for the rest. But I just want to encourage you to lead your life from a place of love, understanding, and then just knowing that your unique self is exactly the way that it needs to be, and you don't need to be anything different. So thank you. Bye.